Alright guys, so today we're going to be solving quadratic functions, and this is section 5 in Math Nation, topics 3 through 5. Okay, so last week we had learned what a quadratic function is, and this is a quadratic function in standard form. This is just f of x, and we're going to remember this is the same thing as y. This is the same thing as your output, is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c. So a root, and we learned this last week as well, is another name for a zero or a solution of a function, where a function crosses the x-axis. So our root is the same thing as a zero, is the same thing as our solution, and it's the same thing as our x-intercepts. All of those words and terminology can be used interchangeably. So it's important to know that if it's asking for the root, it's just asking for the solution to the quadratic function. Okay, so there's this thing called the discriminant formula, and that's used to determine how many roots or solutions or zeros a quadratic function has using the formula b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so b squared minus 4ac is our discriminant formula that we're going to use moving forward to determine how many solutions. So if there's a positive discriminant, then there are two real solutions. Okay, positive discriminant, two real solutions. If the discriminant of zero, if your discriminant is zero, then you have one real solution. Okay, so if we have zero, there's one real solution. Now, if we have a negative discriminant, okay, a negative discriminant, if there's a negative discriminant, then there are no real solutions. Okay, so if we do this formula and we get a negative number, there are no real solutions to that function. And we'll find out why in a little bit. So here's an example. How many solutions does 3x squared minus 4x plus 10 equals 0 have? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to take our formula b squared minus 4ac, so b squared minus 4ac, and we're going to plug in our numbers. So this is our b, negative 4 is our b, so we're going to fill that in here. Make it a little skinnier. So we're going to have negative 4 squared. Then we are going to subtract 4, and we have to multiply our a term times our c term. So our a term will go here, and our c term will go here. Okay, so 4 times a times c. So now let's simplify this. Negative 4 squared is going to be 16. And then we have negative 4 times 3 times 10. So let's see, 3 times 10 is 30. So we have to multiply that by a negative 4. So that's going to be negative 120. And that's going to equal a negative 104. So because this answer is negative, how many solutions do we have? No real solutions. Okay, so all we had to do was take this equation, plug these different numbers into our discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac, and determine what type, how many solutions there were, how many roots, how many zeros, how many x-intercepts. So what that is saying is that this quadratic function right here does not cross the x-axis. Okay, so here are a few more examples. It says find the number of solutions for x squared plus 8x plus 16. So we're going to still use our formula b squared minus 4ac. Okay, remember that, I have to highlight that in order, sorry. So this is our a, this is our b, and this is our c term. So we're going to use those to plug into our formula. So b squared is just going to be 1 squared minus 4, because that 4 does not change in the formula. That 4 stays the same. Minus 4 multiplied by a. I keep messing up, guys. Trying to think too much at one time. So b squared is going to be 8 squared. Okay, 8 squared. That's the number that goes there. Minus 4 times a, which is the 1 that I put earlier, multiplied by 16. And that equals 0. Okay, so if once we plug this in, we get a negative number, we know that we have no solutions. So let's see what happens. I'm going to finish highlighting here first, though, just so we can keep everything color-coded so we know where everything went. So my B here, my A here, and my C here, right? All right, so 8 squared is going to be 64. And then we're going to subtract 4 times 16, because 4 times 1 is just negative 4. So we're going to multiply that by 16, and we're going to get negative 64. Well, what's 64 minus 64? Well, that's equal to 0. So according to our rules, if the discriminant is 0, how many solutions do we have? 1 real solution. Okay, so 1 real solution. Because our discriminant was 0, we're going to have 1 real solution. And I'm just going to make that a different color so that we don't get confused. Okay, so 1 real solution when our discriminant is 0. And we'll see what that looks like on a graph soon. All right, number 2, use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions. So here again, we have our A term, our B term, and our C term, and we're going to plug that into our discriminant formula, which is going to be 6 squared, right? So it's B squared minus 4 multiplied by A and multiplied by C. So my A is going to go here, and my C is going to go here. So multiplied by 2 and multiplied by negative 8. Well, 2 times negative 8 gives me a negative 16. Okay, so negative 4 times a negative 16 is going to be 64. And then 6 squared, I have 36. Oh, I have a negative 16 times a negative 4, so it's going to be a positive 64, right? So I have a negative multiplied by this negative, so I'm going to get a positive number. So 36 plus 64, and that is going to equal 100. Well, 100 is a specific type of discriminant. It is a positive discriminant, right? So a positive discriminant means there are two real solutions. All right, I want you to do 3 and 4 on your own. So when you turn in a picture of your notes today, you should have done 3 and 4 on your own. You're just determining, you're using the discriminant formula to determine how many solutions you have. Okay? So now we're moving on to the next part of our notes. So on the right is a graph of the function f of x equals x squared minus 1. It asks, what are the roots? Well, the roots here, I can tell you just by looking at the graph. My roots are right here. So x is equal to 1 and x is equal to negative 1, right? Because this is 0, this is 1, and this is negative 1. Factor the expression x squared minus 1. Well, if I have to factor x squared minus 1, that's going to be x plus 1 and x minus 1. Okay, what I want you to notice here is that we have a positive 1 here and a negative 1 here. Well, if x is equal to negative 1, what that really is saying, if we factor that out, then it's going to look like that, x plus 1. And then the x negative 1 is this right here. It says now set both factors equal to 0 and solve. What do you notice? Okay, so if we have x plus 1 equal to 0, well, then I have to subtract 1 and subtract 1, so x is equal to negative 1. That's exactly what we had right here. Now if I do x minus 1 and set that equal to 0, I'm going to add 1 and add 1, so x is equal to a positive 1. And that's exactly what we had here. Okay, so what do you notice? Well, if I factor it, or if I look at the graph, I know that I'm going to end up with the same solutions, right? So when I solved, I got the roots as my answer. Okay, that's because our roots are the same thing as our solutions. They're the same thing as our zeros, right? They're the same thing as our zeros. They're the same thing as our x-intercept, because all of these points are telling us the same thing. Okay, so now we're going to try 2 more, and then you're going to do 3 and 4 on your own. So number 1, again, find the number of solutions. So we're going to take our A, B, and C terms and plug it into our b squared minus 4ac. So b squared is going to be 5 squared, right? Minus 4, that's not going to change. Multiplied by my a, which is 3, multiplied by my c, which is negative 2. Okay, don't forget to bring the sign with the number in your function. Okay, so here's your 3, here's your negative 2. So 5 squared, we have 25. Negative 4 times 3 is going to be negative 12. And then negative 12 times negative 2 is going to be a positive 24. So 25 plus 24 is going to equal 49. Well, 49 is a positive solution. So there are 2 real solutions. I think 2 real solutions. We had highlighted in green. Yeah. Okay, so 2 real solutions because we had a positive discriminant. All right, number 2, use the discriminant to determine the number of solutions. All right, doing the same thing. A term, B term, C term. So we are going to take our B first, so negative 8 squared minus 4 multiplied by A, which is 1, and multiplied by C, which is 16. So 4 times A times C. Well, negative 8 squared is going to give me a positive 64. Negative 4 times 1 is going to give me negative 4, multiplied by 16, and that's going to give me 64. So a negative 64. So 64 minus 64, here what I'll do is I'll just write this down here. Right, 64 minus 64 is equal to 0. Well, a 0 discriminant means what? How many solutions do we have? 1 real solution. Okay, so just by using the discriminant, we can determine if we are going to have a solution to this function or not. Okay, so number 3 and number 4, you're going to do on your own, on your paper, or in your notes. When you finish, or if you have questions, ask me during the class meeting, and then turn in a picture of your notes and these practice problems for today's classwork. Bye guys. Have a good day.